The race for U.S. Senate in Texas is getting tighter, and money is pouring in like we have never seen it before in the run-up to next month's election. Joining us here this afternoon is our very own anchor, Daniel Marine, who heads up our Campaign Context series. Daniel, thanks for joining us again. You know, we are looking at those latest fundraising numbers from both Ted Cruz and Allred. What did those numbers show us?
Yeah, if we can take a look at them, those numbers, they came out on Monday. Well, on Monday, I should say, the Republican incumbent Senator Ted Cruz's campaign announced that they raised about $21 million in the third quarter. And then a day later, Democratic Congressman Allred's team announced that they've raised a little more than $30 million. So $9 million more than Cruz. Both campaigns, though, and this is of note, have combined. They have raised $132 million so far in the entire race. That's noteworthy because they've already raised more than was raised in all of the 2018 race.
Yeah, and that race was so close. Yeah. It was a lot of money that was poured in when Ted Cruz faced Beto O'Rourke just 6 years ago. Yeah,
very much so. And if you'll remember O'Rourke's fundraising, it was off the charts. He topped out at about $80 million, according to the Federal Election Commission. The Cruz campaign raised about $31 million, but in the end, as you mentioned, Will, Cruz was able to squeak by. He won by about 2.5 percentage points. Still, that is the closest the Democrat has gotten to defeating a Republican in a statewide election in 3 decades.
Of course, we're going to be watching what the result is come this November when Allred faces Cruz. But let's talk about the polling in this race, because it has been a little bit all over the map and shown that it's pretty close as well.
That's right. Yeah, we have some new numbers from our partners over at The Hill and Emerson College. The status just from a few weeks ago at the end of September, and we can show those numbers. Cruz is still ahead, 49 to 45%. This is among all likely voters. The margin of error is about 3%, though. Should mention at this point in 2018, O'Rourke was actually doing a little bit better in some of the polls, but again, this is still very much a close race between Cruz and Allred. Cruz is still the favorite. He's got the electoral map in his favor. But as you and I were talking about earlier on Monday, again, The Hill, they pointed out that Cook Political Report, they recently shifted the race in the Democratic direction. They took it from likely Republican to leaning Republican.
Yeah, that caught a lot of people's attention. I saw so many people tweeting about that too. But, you know, in this last month before the election begins, what is the messaging focusing on between these two candidates?
Right, the message, you've probably seen the messaging right here on KXAN.
Everywhere,
during the commercial breaks, even in this newscast, I'm sure. Both campaigns are flooding the ads, airwaves with ads. Allred using some of his ads to introduce himself to voters. You know, he doesn't have the background that Cruz does. Well, I should say that Cruz has been around longer. He's the incumbent. Allred also taking a tough stance on the border in some of his ads. He's also said that he stood up to President Biden and the White House, pushing for tougher border enforcement. Other ads are attacking Ted Cruz on reproductive rights. Now, on the other side, Cruz and his backers have been painting Allred as being weak on the border. Polling shows that Republicans, as you know very well, will do better when it comes to the border and immigration. And then a lot of anti-Allred ads are also centered on transgender issues. You've probably seen those, particularly transgender youth and sports.
Yeah, I feel like every time we look up at a commercial break, it's a campaign ad mixed with something else. Yeah, so they are everywhere right now. Well, right now we will leave it there. Thank you again so much, Daniel, for joining us. We appreciate it as always.
Okay, always good to be